In 2002, EA released The Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers for consoles to coincide with the release of the film. It looked great and sounded amazing, but was a very basic hack and slash title. As a child, I loved it very much, but as a senile old man, I was less impressed. The following year, EA released a tie-in for the upcoming Return of the King, which triumphantly improved on its predecessor in every way imaginable. While I had played The Two Towers with my friend Stephen, with a PH, this time I played Return of the King with my friend Stephen, with a V. Stephen with a V bought it at release and we played it for ages at his house. When my stepdad Steve came to pick me up, I told him how much I wanted the new Lord of the Rings game for PS2, and sure enough, a month or so later, he brought home a bootleg copy of Enter the Matrix? What? I never got the Return of the King in the end, and that blissful day at my friend's house was the only experience I had with it. That was over 20 years ago, so now I turn to emulation, to relive the glory days of my youth. Was the game as good as I remember? Yes! While The Two Towers had a linear mission structure locked to Aragorn's perspective of the first two films, Return of the King now has 3 different streams of missions with different characters. The Path of the Wizard follows Gandalf, The Path of the King continues Aragorn, Legolas and Gimli's journey, and The Path of the Hobbits follows Frodo and Sam. Much like its predecessor, Return of the King doesn't keep strictly to its own film. With the expanded roster, we dip back into the Two Towers to conclude the Battle of Helm's Deep as Gandalf, and escape Osgiliath as Sam and Frodo before venturing into the third film. It's not just an excellent decision by EA Redwood Shores, but a necessary one. The Two Towers game was jarring as hell jumping from one scene to another, even if you're extremely familiar with the film. With this one, you get the full picture, but we'll come back to that later. Gameplay wise, Return of the King is still a hack and slash at heart, but now there's a lot more variety added in compared to the last one. Objectives are more varied, the missions are way longer, and now there's some interactivity with the environment. Much like the last one, you get a light attack, a heavy attack, a parry, and a kick. Different combinations of those will yield various combos. On top of those, we have a finishing move to stab downed enemies in the dick, and a basic ranged attack system. Come on, you filth! Sounds good, right? Hell yeah, it is. Shielded enemies in the last game were a real fucking pest because they cancelled your combos if you hit them with a light attack by mistake, and the game insisted on placing them randomly among non-shielded enemies. It messed with the flow, but this time, greater consideration has been made towards the placement of enemies. Enemies now telegraph their attacks clearly, except for these godforsaken spiders, and don't absolutely body you as you're trying to stand back up. Each character has slightly different base stats, but I didn't find them to be as noticeable as the difference between Gimli and Legolas's playstyles in the previous game. As you defeat enemies, you build up the combo meter. Once it fills up, you hit perfect mode and can wreak havoc with extreme damage, your overall mission rating will get a boost, and you'll get more points to purchase upgrades. Like the previous game, you can purchase upgrades for your characters at the end of each mission, but unlike the last game, you can pay a little more to bulk buy fellowship upgrades for all characters, as if you're at some sort of Middle-earth flea market. Always bulk buy the upgrades. There is absolutely no advantage to not bulk buying the upgrades. To use the skills, you need to be at the right level, so just because you've leveled up Samwise the Brave to level 10, does not mean that level 1 Gandalf the Fool can mooch off the higher level abilities he's purchased for the rest of the fellowship. Don't be that guy, Gandalf. If you can't cleanse Isengard of its corruption, then Sam will. While most upgrades add more flavour to the game, there's one particular set of upgrades that can rob you of some of the challenge, and that's Bane. Orc Bane, Warrior Bane, Bane of Sauron. It was an upgrade in the Two Towers, but the button combination was slightly more complicated. For the Return of the King, a simple parry followed by a finishing move will instantly kill the attacking enemy, and then put you into perfect mode. The insta-kill? Fine. At least there's some timing involved in doing it right. But perfect mode? Come on. Perfect mode is a bit of overkill. I liked it as a kid, but not so much anymore. In terms of story, it more or less follows the film, but with a few scenes expanded and embellished for gameplay purposes, such as the duel with the Mouth of Sauron, which Aragorn delegates to Gimli. Also, some cool stuff that was cut from the film ended up in the game, like the collapsing past of the dead, and the Easterling army at Minas Tirith. Instead of Aragorn narrating the story as he did in the previous game, we have Gandalf, and hot damn is he a great narrator. We all know Ian McKellen has an amazing voice, but even the writing feels on par with the films. I thought they were just taking deleted lines from the film, but no, they're all specifically read for the game, and that's so cool. The assault on Isengard even has this awesome original exchange between he and Christopher Lee's Saruman.
Smoke rises from Isengard. The hour grows late, and now you stride to Isengard, seeking my counsel. For that is why you have come, is it not, my friend?
Saruman, you bring shame upon our order. Your cunning mind is consumed by war.
It is you who spreads fear amongst the innocent.
Branches crush, roots bury all that remains of your vanity.
Burn them all, I say. And good riddance.
Gandalf comes to Isengard, no longer seeking your counsel.
Gandalf reframes the story as if all these random elements were part of his grand design to overthrow Sauron, and although that's not entirely accurate, it does make for a more comprehensible story than the previous game. Video game Gandalf's omniscient powers haven't quite reached their full potential yet, but just you wait.
We meet again on the other side.
Gandalf's path has him leading the defense of Minas Tirith. Aragorn's path has him recruiting the army of the dead and leading them to save Minas Tirith, while Sam's path has him escaping Osgiliath and venturing further into Mordor. You can play each path in any order, but they all converge at the Battle of the Black Gate, followed by the Cracks of Doom. At the conclusion of the story, you unlock 2 new wave modes, which unfortunately don't conclude with a confrontation with Saruman like the last game. But more importantly than that, you can now replay every mission with any character, including 3 new unlocked characters, and that's where we get to my favourite part of this game. One of the greatest strengths, I feel, about the expanded cast of characters is that you can roleplay so many alternate Lord of the Rings scenarios. Let's go back to 2001. What if things were different? What if Gimli had gone with Frodo instead of Sam? What if Sam had gone with Aragorn? What if Faramir stayed back to defend Minas Tirith? What if Mark Wahlberg was on American Airlines Flight 11 with his kids? I'm just saying, it wouldn't have went down the way it did. There would have been a lot of blood in that first class cabin, and then Mark saying, "Okay, we're gonna land somewhere safely, don't worry." Presentation wise, Return of the King is a big step up from The Two Towers, and that game had fantastic presentation aside from, well, you know. But now the characters actually look like their character. Look at this beautiful dwarf. Unfortunately, this means that the morph transitions from the movie footage into the game engine aren't nearly as funny, but we still get some good ones. Not only do the characters now look like real people, they also move like real people. It seems like just about every character is powered by motion capture, with the fluidity of the movement directly contributing to the smoother feeling gameplay. Most of the maps are beautiful and expansive, still linear mind you, but the production values are excellent for the time, and the way some missions take you on an epic journey feels so true to the films. In Osgiliath, you move through the ruined streets, then up into the chaotic rooftops, before descending deep down into the sewers below. After Helm's Deep, you pursue the fleeing Uruk-hai through the forest, right through to the outskirts where Saruman's forces have uprooted all the trees, and then further still right to the dam that drowns all of Isengard. Even the smaller maps are bustling with activity, making the small area you play in seem like part of something much grander in scope. The Siege of Minas Tirith is basically the same as the Deeping Wall mission from The Two Towers. I didn't like the Deeping Wall, but I love Minas Tirith. Why? In both missions, your goal is to hold back the enemy assault on the walls by knocking down ladders, but the Deeping Wall was just a constant onslaught, which didn't really have any highs or lows until an invisible timer counted down and ended the mission. Minas Tirith doesn't have a timer, but the events escalate with siege towers added to complicate matters, the ability to obliterate the Bitch King, and then joining the massive retreat once the mission is at its end. And the whole time, Howard Shore's majestic score is playing in the background. Now that is how you do a siege mission. And aside from the art direction, it's simply a technically impressive game. Shadows, particle effects, and dozens of characters filling the frame all at once. Some developers struggle to do this even today. All the footage you're seeing is running on a PS2 emulator with an upscaled resolution. And aside from the silky smooth cracks of Doom, there were no visual bugs at all. In terms of sound, Everything sounds exactly like the film, and that includes the voice acting. For Return of the King, most of the main cast again signed on to be part of it, with the notable exceptions of Viggo Mortensen and Orlando Bloom, and they stand out a lot when compared to the film actors. The Aragorn impersonator only ever shouts his lines, but somehow he feels iconic in his own way.
Easterling! Orcs! Get them all!
These lines have been rattling around my head for over 20 years now. Legolas, however, just sounds like a nerd.
It was made by those who are dead, and the dead keep it.
I kind of want to beat him up. I already mentioned that Ian
I have never played a video game in my life. I can never understand the rules.
McKellen is an absolute standout. In fact, he looks like he's actually enjoying himself this time, and I don't know how, but they managed to trick Christopher Lee into reading lines for a video game. Twice. And the others are great too. You already know how much I love John Rhys-Davies as Gimli. I think it's a bit obvious how biased I am towards this game. The Lord of the Rings trilogy might be my favourite film franchise of all time. The game isn't revolutionary for the video game industry, and it never was. But unlike other tie-ins which slapped the license onto terrible, hastily put together trash, it succeeded at creating a fun experience. Yes, it was born purely for profit, but was made with care beyond what most licensed games of the time usually received. If only I could say the same about the next game in the series. Yes, this was also from the same people.
I am certainly a lot better than Dom. Dom, who, talks a good game.
Oh, look at me go, I'm on fire now.
He says, I'm getting so good at this game. I says, okay, give us it. Beat him 3 times in a row.
Billy's getting better, but he's not great.
Billy is awful. One of the worst game players of all time.
I think I do have a special gift for gaming.
You'll be playing a 2-player game and you'll go, Billy, press X, and he'll be like, hang on a minute, wait, which one's X?
But I just haven't really opened that gift yet and given it to myself.